Finding information from a diagram. There are some relationships you can assume to be true from a diagram that has no marks or measures. There are other relationships you cannot assume directly. For example, you can conclude the following from an unmarked diagram. You can conclude that angles are adjacent if they appear adjacent, like angles 3 and 4 shown here. You can assume that angles are adjacent and supplementary if they appear to be adjacent and supplementary, as shown with angles 1 and 2 here. And you can assume angles are vertical angles if they appear to be vertical angles, as shown here with angles 1 and 2, and also angles 3 and 4. In this case, we see a triangle, ABC, and since congruent marks are not present, you cannot conclude that angle A is congruent to angle C, even if it looks like it is. And you can also not conclude that segment AB is congruent to segment BC, even if that appears to be the case. In the case of the quadrilateral, shown here with an angle 1 marked, it sure looks to be a square, but since right angle marks are not present, you cannot conclude that angle 1 is right or that angle 2 is a right angle. Since you do not have evidence that the measures of angle 1 and angle 2 have a sum of 90, you cannot conclude that angle 1 and angle 2 are complements. Problem 2. Making conclusions from a diagram. What can you conclude from the information in the diagram? Consider the diagram carefully. We have some arcs indicating congruent angles. We have opposite rays. Well, first, we can state that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 by the markings. Next, we can state that angle 3 and angle 5 are vertical angles, which may not be plain to see because of that ray on the left-hand side between angles 1 and 2. But if we ignore that, it's pretty easy to see that we have two intersecting lines, so opposite rays formed, and angles 3 and 5 are opposite the vertex. So, once again, angles 3 and 5 are vertical angles. Next, we can state angle 1 and 2, angle 2 and 3, angle 3 and 4, angle 4 and 5, and angle 5 and 1 are adjacent angles. They all share a common side. And finally, angle 3 and angle 4, and angle 4 and angle 5 are adjacent supplementary angles. So, the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 equals 180, and likewise the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 5 equals 180, and that's by the definition of supplementary angles. Your turn. Can you make each conclusion from the information in the diagram? Explain. Part A. Segment TW is congruent to segment WV. Part B. Segment PW is congruent to segment WQ. Part C. Angle TWQ is a right angle. And finally, Part D. Segment TV bisects segment PQ.